Welcome to the University of the West Indies, Open Campus, St. Lucia. Shortly after his arrival in St. Lucia, Ambassador Lopez Moreno paid a courtesy call to our UE Open Campus here at Mont Fortune. And we immediately began discussing ways in which the missions of the embassy and the Open Campus could find common ways of expression. We noted that both of us were pursuing missions related to human development, and that public education was a critical avenue through which such missions could be successfully pursued. Our next meeting included Ms. Narvaez Abad, who had by then arrived on island to take up responsibility for the type of cooperation that we had begun to discuss. I was immediately struck by her keen enthusiasm and her eagerness to begin to solidify the relationship between this outreach arm of our regional university and the Mexican embassy to the OECS with residence in St. Lucia. And for those of you who know Ms. Abad, you know how her enthusiasm can be contagious. So even if you're a little reluctant to get involved in something, she gets you involved. Having outlined our first activity, which focused on the cultural engagement of youth, we moved quickly along to its realization. So with the sponsorship of the Mexican embassy, and thank you, Ambassador, we hosted a cultural workshop here at the Open Campus site. And this workshop was really for theater arts students of the Marigot and George Charles secondary schools in July. The workshop enabled students to explore similarities between the cultures of St. Lucia and Mexico through dance and the visual arts. And you can see some scenes from that workshop. The students and accompanying teachers enjoyed the experience immensely and put on a display of what they had learned and accomplished at the end. So you notice that they are dressed in costume. These are their costumes. They were doing a dance called a pineapple dance, I think it was, the dance of the pineapples, more or less. I can't remember the Spanish name of the dance. I think I failed that part of the workshop. And all of them at the end received certificates of participation, which were presented by the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Education. And you notice that she was also participating in the dancing, if you recognize Miss Esther Brathwaite here in that photo. Of course, at the end, they got to sample some Mexican cuisine. So there were tacos. So there you go. Needless to say, we are already considering our next joint activity, which will also be aimed at young people. Tonight's lecture is another example of collaboration between the embassy and the University of the West Indies. The Open Campus, as part of its outreach mandate, has hosted a series of public lectures on a wide variety of topics in an effort to raise the depth of knowledge and the level of intellectual discourse among St. Lucians. We are very happy that the embassy, through Ms. Abad, has undertaken to stimulate public discussion of St. Lucia, Mexico, bilateral relations, past, present, and future. I am quite sure that this lecture will be highly stimulating, informative, thought-provoking. So at this point, I would like to introduce our lecturer for this evening. Born in Oaxaca, Mexico, on October 25th, 1976, Ms. Maite Narvaez Abad holds a BSc in Human Sciences from the University of the Americas in Puebla, Mexico. A dissertation project entitled Proposal for a Postmodernist Ontology of Silence and I'm sure you're all dying to read that. She also has a diploma in French to Spanish translation from El Colegio de Mexico. Besides Spanish, her mother tongue, she's also fluent in English, French, and Italian. But I guarantee she will not be breaking out into French and Italian during this particular lecture. Her career as a Mexican diplomat started in 2007 with the Mexican Foreign Service, and she has been at the rank of 3rd Secretary from 2012 to the present. She has worked in 3 different missions: the Consulate General of Mexico in Raleigh, North Carolina, and secondly in the Mexican Ministry of Foreign Affairs, headquarters in Mexico City. And she is now at her current post in the Embassy of Mexico to the OECS member states with residence in St. Lucia, a position that she began 9 months ago. Currently, she's in charge of cooperation and cultural affairs. So that explains a lot of the interaction that she has with us here at the UE Open Campus.
Today, I would like to tell you a story. This story begins in May 17, 1979. On that day, 2 countries, one with not even 3 months of independence, St. Lucia, and another with 170 years of independence, Mexico, decided to become friends, and therefore they began their diplomatic relations. Now, as every other relationship, this one has stages, periods. The first one goes from 1979 to more or less 2005. During this span of time, being honest, the diplomatic relationship, the bilateral diplomatic relationship didn't grow that much. We greeted each other at international fora. We got together at the OAS, for example. We started the works to create the Association of Caribbean States. We got together with other international friends to discuss regional matters such as Cuba or Grenada or the situation in Central America. But the bilateral diplomatic relationship didn't really grow. Why did this happen? Well, from the Mexican perspective, this has a reason. And maybe to understand it better, we need to look at Mexico's geographical position. As you can see, Mexico has 5 borders. To the north with the US, to the south with Guatemala and Belize, to the southeast with the Caribbean Sea, to the east with the Atlantic Ocean, and to the west with the Pacific Ocean. But for the longest of times, and this includes most of the 1979 to 2005 period that we were discussing before, we behaved as if the maritime borders did not very much existed. We only concentrated ourselves in the northern border and the southern border with Guatemala and Belize. Why did we put so much attention to the US? Well, we share 3,000 kilometers of border. We trade $1 million a day, and 10% of our population lives there. So, it's important for us. But, and it concentrated most of our international attention, but around 2000, we took a shift in our international approach to our neighbors. And we decided to make a change and put more attention in the global perspective. We turned again our attention to the Caribbean. We started to sign commercial agreements with Asia and Europe, for example. And then this brings us to the second part of our period, which goes from 2005 to 2012. What happens in those years, especially with the Caribbean, with the southern east border there? Well, we decided to change our attention. And we decided to put more focus on not only in the Spanish-speaking Caribbean, which is Cuba, Dominican Republic, and Haiti as well, but to the English-speaking Caribbean. We realized that we have maritime borders not only with Cuba, but with Jamaica, and we decided to renew our vows of friendship with the English-speaking Caribbean. And therefore, one of the things that we did was, in 2005, open an embassy here. Once it was open, one of the first actions that to strengthen our presence here was to start a very aggressive scholarship programs that included, if I'm not mistaken, 150 scholarships that year for bachelor's degree. Actually, 3 solutions, at least, the 2 of them who works right now at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, took advantage of that scholarship. But the speed in which things were moving was not fast. We had an embassy here, we had cooperation programs, more or less, especially scholarships, but no much more than that. And here comes the third part, which starts in 2012, with the new federal administration in Mexico that started in December of 2012. In that moment, our government decided to change the engine of the car that we were using to move our relationship with the Caribbean and the Eastern Caribbean especially, from let's say a normal car to a turbo car. And one of the key parts of that turbo car is right here with us, and it's Ambassador Lopez Moreno. Not because it's my boss, but just because he deserves it. So imagine that since 2012, and especially since 2014, when Ambassador Lopez Moreno arrived in the island, we have had more exchanges, more cooperation agreements signed, more cooperation people here. We have 2 people here that I will discuss that later, than in the previous 30 years. For instance, in February 2014, as we all remember, in 2013, in December, you have had this difficult situation with the Christmas Eve rains. And you reached out to your friends, as you normally do. And one of your friends that responded was Mexico. Not only we responded, our Ministry of Foreign Affairs paid you a visit for the first time in years. And he came with $500,000 to support your reconstruction efforts. 4 months later, in June, we signed an integral agreement that covers all areas of cooperation: education, technical and scientific, cultural, youth, sports, you name it, it's there. This agreement is right now in the Senate in Mexico, waiting for approval. We hope that it will get approval soon, but once it's in action, it will give us another tool to strengthen the cooperation with St. Lucia. In March that year, we provided $5 million for Dennery. In Dennery, you are gonna build a water treatment plant. In June, we gave you 2.7 US million for St. Jude Hospital. But not all what we have done is infrastructure cooperation. We also have, as Dr. Simon mentioned, strengthened the cultural sphere of our cooperation. For instance, in January, Mexico participated for the first time in the Derek Walcott the Nobel Week, and I had the pleasure and the honor to share the stage with a friend of the embassy who's here, Nash. Thank you so very much for that. In July, we worked with Dr. Simon, her team, to put the workshop that you saw. And in 2 weeks, and I take the opportunity to invite you all, there will be a play, a Mexican play staged at the National Cultural Center. There's also technical and scientific cooperation here. Last week, a Mexican expert landed in the country to be part of a cooperation project that my country and the International Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture are supporting to fight a disease in the coconut plants, which is called the lethal yellow disease. His name is Guillermo, and he's here. Also, before the end of the month, St. Lucia will receive 72,000 US for a cooperation regarding protected agriculture. We are going to rebuild the 2 greenhouses that that's already constructed in 2012. Thank you. And also, this past Sunday, another good friend came, a teacher who will join the team of the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College to teach Spanish to the youth of St. Lucian. He is the first of, I hope, too many to come. Fidel, where are you? And we also have in the audience Ms. Laverne Daniels. She is the only OECS national that will go to Mexico starting January to study a scholarship program in Mexico in tourism. Laverne, congratulations. I want to make a parenthesis. We have here Snalia Mahal. She was one of the students that I was telling you about that went to Mexico to study her bachelor's degree in in international relations in Mexico. So she's here. All these initiatives, all these examples of closeness between Mexico and St. Lucia are fantastic, but we are only 10 years, we are only 36 years of friendship. There are so many more things that we can do. So let's talk about the future. What's ahead for us? The first thing that we need to think about is language. As I mentioned, Fidel is here to teach Spanish to the youth, and he will also help us to develop a project with our partners, including we hope to include the University of the West Indies in that, to get Spanish as a second language widespread. You need to learn Spanish, we need to learn English, and we need to learn from you as well. So I hope that can work. So the idea of a language barrier, of Levern could tell you about in the tourism industry, Mexico is, as you know, a Spanish-speaking country, but we receive people from Taiwan, for instance, China, the Arabic world, who don't speak Spanish. And they go there. Last year, we received 30 million tourists. And more than the half of that tourism was not Spanish-speaking. So if we can do it, you can do it, and we would love to help you do it. That's one. First. Second, business. We have here in the audience a member of the private sector of St. Lucia who will attend a forum that will be in Cancun from the 9th to the 11th, in which there will be 500 Mexican enterprises, all of them, hola Tracy, all of them who wants to invest in St. Lucia and in the Caribbean. And the company of the young lady that we have here, hello, please raise your hand. Yeah, she's the one who's gonna go. We hope to get, there will be 10 enterprises from the OACS going. Her enterprise is one of them. So the business culture is important. You are accustomed to turn your head to the US or to the UK for your history, yes. But just think about it. The Spanish-speaking world is more than 500 million people. That means 500 million potential guests, or 500 million potential customers. And the only one who can decide to open that door is you. We're willing to come, so I would hope for you to let us come in. And the third part of the future, we all have financial restrictions, but I think that we can create creative approaches to focus on maybe small projects in both sides that can widespread and have an impact. For example, the workshop that we did with the UE, it was perhaps a simple idea, but the impact of those young people, the familiarity that they get to Mexico and their language, it stays with them for the rest of their lives. It's Nalia's experience, it stays with her for the rest of her life. I hope Levern's experience will stay with her for the rest of her life. In a nutshell, as I was telling you, Mexico is your friend. We have only 36 years of experience, and let me tell you, that is young. So the only thing that we have from here on is whatever we want to create and whatever we want to take our relationship. So the embassy, and with that, the Mexican people and the Mexican government are willing to work with you, to help you grow, and for you to help us grow as well. Thank you so very much.
I would first of all like to thank Maite very much for her excellent delivery this evening and for helping us to better understand the relationship between our two nations and the endless possibilities that exist also for further collaboration in the future. I take this opportunity also to thank both Maite and Your Excellency for the honor of hosting this lecture this evening on behalf of the Embassy of Mexico. 10 years is a very important milestone, and we are so glad that we could assist and to share in the celebration with you. And of course, we look forward to continued good relations between our two organizations and to other collaborations in the future.